Does anyone else forget that a Zelda game came out last year? Last year saw the release of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which was known for a long time simply as the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The genre-refreshing, series-defying modern masterpiece that did everything perfectly and no one had any qualms with whatsoever. Okay, yeah, you've heard it a million times from a bunch of losers on the internet like me. Breath of the Wild came out and it was incredible, but over time its flaws and problems became apparent. Problems I was really keen to see how Anuma and the team would tackle in their sequel. And long story short, they kinda did, but also didn't. They doubled down on everything in Breath of the Wild, both the good and the bad. And since completing it last year, it's made me really sentimental and introspective, forcing me to look backwards at the series as well as into my own head and figure out why I liked these games in the first place. And after doing all the research in the world, today we are going to dive into these two behemoths of a game to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is time to put that annoying YouTube catchphrase to rest. Are these two games good Zelda games? Also, my friend keeps begging me to act more like a YouTuber and asks you guys, so like this video if you think Ganondorf is hot. That's funny because I actually think he's a bit rude. Once upon a time, there was nothing. Then there was Light Orb something, and then millions of years later it was 1986, and Nintendo released Shigeru Miyamoto's fantasy adventure, The Legend of Zelda. Based on his childhood adventures of exploring Kyoto, you took on the role of Link, fighting monsters, exploring dungeons, solving puzzles, and saving the princess, Zelda. And then they made a few more, and we'll call all of those ones the retro era. It was the genesis of the franchise, and they were figuring out game to game what worked and how to better improve on what made it all click. Then what's that? Knock knock, it's 1998, Big Boy Malloy Ocarina of Time, now we're in the traditional era. Ocarina of Time brought the formula that was solidified in A Link to the Past and then fully realized it in 3D. And pretty much every single game from here all the way up until Triforce Heroes in 2015 was following this one. Your Link in Hyrule, here have a sword and go on a big adventure, and how you get there changes each time, but in essence you go to a dungeon, get a cool new item, go to the next dungeon, get a new cool item, do that a couple of more times, the credits roll, oh hey look, it's a rainbow, isn't that neat? And then we have the modern era, or maybe the open world era, or actually, you know, what's most fitting is the experimentation era. And if we're gonna go by that last definition, then maybe you could argue that it started back with A Link Between Worlds, which flung away the linear order of dungeons and allowed the player to rent items and tackle the adventure in any way they seemed fit. But this era was firmly defined when Breath of the Wild came out and turned everything on its head. Everything you knew about Zelda was gone as they went all the way back to the drawing board to try and reinvigorate the legend. But in the process, it sometimes felt like a little too much was left out of the picture. The memorable dungeons, interesting characters, unforgettable music, the fucking hookshot. The main difference between traditional Zelda and experimental Zelda is the way in which you progress. Wow. Both styles plop you in a world full of a bunch of locks. In traditional Zelda, you were given one small key, which you can use to unlock this lock, which gives you another key to unlock over here, and then over there, and then over here, and before you know it, your inventory, your health bar, your skill as Link has grown until you're ready to save the day. It's this very rewarding and fun feeling of leveling up, which is motivated both by the reward of new items or permanent buffs, as well as a cool narrative. You're telling me this pirate girl is who? What? While from Breath of the Wild onwards, you similarly start out in a giant map with a bunch of locks, but the difference being right from the get-go, they give you every single key, which means you can do anything anytime you want in any order. And this freedom is euphoric, it's intoxicating, it's even a little orgasmic. I'll admit it. Leaving the Great Plateau and being able to go anywhere you want and have your own unique adventure through the world of Hyrule is so incredible. You no longer get moments where you find something cool that you just don't have the right tool for, because you have every tool you'll ever need right from the start. And this approach to the game feels so much more in line with Miyamoto's original vision of his childhood adventures. But just like your childhood, it comes with problems. Let me reiterate though, there is nothing like playing Breath of the Wild for the first first time. The way the game immediately begins is a nice change of pace in juxtaposition to its predecessor. You run out to the side of a cliff to a great musical swell as you see the entire world, ready to be explored and discovered. It's so magnificent it almost makes you feel fine with the fact that you're stuck in your underwear. Oh, Jiminy Crickets! And then the big tutorial area, the Great Plateau, is just brilliant because it's almost the entire game instilled into a miniature-sized chunk. It teaches you how to explore, salvage materials, use your new rune abilities, cut down trees, snowboard, find towers, find shrines, and everything you're going to do for the next 70 hours minimum. And then when you finally get that paraglider and jump off the island, it's like freedom is injected straight into your veins. You can go absolutely anywhere you want and do absolutely anything you want. And again, I know I'm repeating myself to the point of numbness, but it's intoxicating. Exploring this world for the first time is one of the best experiences you can have in gaming. All the beautiful locales and the great shrine puzzles and the hidden little Korok seeds and getting new weapons and going to great locales and the enemies and opening up a new tower and the shrines and some more Korok seed people and then a cool new environment with 17 more shrines and then you need more weapons because all your ones broke and climb another tower and oh cool, another identically looking shrine. Are there only 7 enemies in this game? And oh wow, another hilly mountain and by the end of the game, you wouldn't be alone if you felt that the world was very vast but kinda shallow. Exploring is fun and rewarding, but without substantial rewards, it starts to feel a bit monotonous. And the fatigue you can feel after seeing your 80th shrine and entering it only for it to be a repeat of a battle you've done 10 times, or at best a cool puzzle trapped within the aesthetic you've seen dozens of times. I'm not trying to knock the magic of the game, because it is definitely something special, but I think the magic source only lasted so long on me before I could not care less about an out-of-place rock that would give me a new Korok seed that would fill up 1/16 of a new inventory slot. But this is only half of what Zelda is about. The other side of the coin is those dungeon spelunking adventures full of puzzles and cool boss fights and interesting themes, and why am I even doing the pretense? You've all played the game, they fucked it, they're so bad! The Divine Beasts are straight up some of the worst dungeons in the series. I appreciate that they tried to take a swing in a different direction, but they just cooked it so bad. Instead of being a maze of locked rooms you must figure your way through, it's just one giant room in the shape of an animal. Get it? Because this Zelda is about everything being open, doing anything in any order. But instead, it just feels like this awkward mishmash of laid out puzzles just sitting there. In the previous games, it can be a little hard at times to stretch your imagination and see people praying at a temple that is a gigantic mechanical sewer or has guillotines followed by 20-foot drops. But what in the world are the Divine Beasts supposed to be in this world except not video game levels? You're telling me this puzzle helps fire a laser? And then when it comes to the puzzles themselves, because you have a wide array of tools right from the start, it means you can solve puzzles in multiple ways, which can be really cool, but in most cases leads to you solving it. The puzzle jingle goes off and you go, oh, that worked, I guess. Cool, all right. There are way fewer aha moments than they used to be, and because you can do any dungeon in any order, they're all about the same level of difficulty, meaning you don't feel stronger and smarter as you progress through them. The only thing that changes is that each time you have more health and die to the boss less. The boss, which, by the way, sucks! In the previous games, you'd always get a little cinematic before a boss. Ganondorf rocks up and pulls his face off to reveal Phantom Ganon. A giant masked wooden man falls from the ceiling and swings his sword about. A colossus worm erupts from the sand and flies around the room. A fierce dragon's roar pierces through the storming winds. A magical suit of armor is reconstructed bit by bit before coming to life, and then you have to whip each part off. Oh, it's so good! The bosses were always so cool and uniquely interesting, and like the reward for getting to the end of a dungeon. In Breath of the Wild, they used the exact same boss 4 times in a row! No, I mean, technically, this one's Thunderblight Ganon, and this one's Fireblight Ganon, and this one's Waterblight Ganon, and this one's Windblight Ganon. What does that even mean? Oh no, the wind's a bit nippy. I bet it's bloody Windblight Ganon. Oh, bloody hell. And the fact that every dungeon has the same ugly aesthetic that is only slightly different from the 6 million shrines you've done by this point. It all blends together and it all kinda sucks. Look, Breath of the Wild is great. I'm not trying to diminish that. It definitely deserved all the 10 out of 10s and the Game Awards.
Thank you, America!
But it's a game that I think only gets worse with time. Things that are slightly annoying on a first playthrough become harshly apparent on a repeat. It's a game that is difficult to replay because so much of the magic comes from that discovery. But when everything to be seen has already been seen, what's left? I had a lot of issues with this game, all things I kept in the back of my mind when Nintendo announced that the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was in development. I had mixed feelings. On one hand, reusing all the hard work they had spent the last 6 years on was a resourcefully smart move. In the modern day, game development takes years, so if reusing all that work helped the game come out quicker, then woohoo! And maybe it would be a really cool Majora's Mask-esque scenario with something drastically different. But on the other hand, I was already tired of this iteration and wondered how they would make exploring the same world again interesting. And on top of that, I was anxious to see how or if they would fix the issues I had with Breath of the Wild, and they kinda did. But let's be positive. What does Tears of the Kingdom get right? Well, actually, a lot. In so many ways, it is a better experience than Breath of the Wild, and if you were a newcomer to the series, I definitely recommend this one over that as your first foray. The game's big feature is its new abilities, with a big focus on Ultra Hand, which lets you pick up objects and then glue them together to make anything you can think of. This is definitely the source of the game, and the thing Nintendo came into work every day drooling from the mouth excited to develop. And it's fantastic. Being able to put fans onto a raft to make a boat or a flying device, or if you're really wacky, a big penis machine, is really cool. It makes the whole world feel like a big sandbox to experiment with your toys in, and really reminds me of Valve's outings with games like Half-Life and Portal. And with this new ability to fuse anything together, they fix one of the most widely complained about parts of the predecessor. One of the biggest problems with Breath of the Wild is that your weapons are constantly breaking every 5 seconds. The idea behind it is that you are always going to be picking up new weapons, so it didn't really matter. But then it sort of created this self-imposed hierarchy where you never wanted to touch the rarer, better weapons because you'd feel like you were wasting them. And so then you just stuck using the shit weapons all the time. But in TOTK, you can fuse your weapons with materials. And so every weapon you'll find in the game is just dog shit, just pure ass, just like hitting an enemy with a foam bat. But when you combine them with your materials, that's when you get the good stuff. Damage goes up, elemental attributes are applied, sticks become long. And because in both games you are constantly picking up materials all the time, your weapons breaking every 5 seconds doesn't really matter anymore. Because now you can always pick up shit weapons, and it's the materials that make them better or worse. And this time the world has expanded with the inclusions of these sky islands. Ooh, and the depths. Whoa. The latter being this very cool, dark, and hazy labyrinth full of scary hands. Oh no! But the most exciting addition, honestly, might be the inclusion of caves around Hyrule. Looking back, it seems insane Breath of the Wild didn't have caves. These are the most natural addition to the world and are so fun to explore. A grand overworld is such a big appeal of Zelda, but it felt uncharacteristic not to have these smaller little underground areas to find secrets or materials or little glowing frog guys in. When I first got to Gerudo Town, I accidentally stumbled into this massive chasm, and it was this natural discovery that I spent so much time exploring, trying to find mirrors to reflect light the right way to discover a secret, and I felt like Indiana Jones, and it was awesome. Even though it is the same world, adding bits like that helps give us the fix that is the magic of discovery. Mostly. But this time around, the world is actually alive and full of people who are interesting and memorable and have that Zelda charm. No one really knew who Link was in Breath of the Wild, and so you just had a bunch of people chilling with not that much character, which felt uncharacteristic of the franchise full of the freakiest weirdos and odd citizens ever. But here, there are so many more memorable and interesting characters, and there are just more characters in general. And they all know Link, and it makes the world feel more welcoming and interesting when you've got people with personality at every step and turn. And it makes the side content way more interesting, because you've got these interesting characters with with interesting wants. They changed the towers from being these big challenges that must be climbed to these fun rewards that shoot you straight up into the sky as Link looks around this vast world and this beautiful saxophone plays, and oh, it's so good. And all the music in general is really good and a big step up from the very sparse, I think kinda same sounding score of the first game. There's just a lot more music and it's more varied and doesn't just feel like you're listening to random arpeggios on a piano anymore. And the main theme is so good. Because of these new towers and your ability to make a helicopter at any point, the game really prioritizes horizontal movement across the world, especially with the new Rito ability that sends you forward versus up. It's a great contrast to Breath of the Wild, where height was key because it let you climb to a new point, while here you can get into the air as easy as you want, so soaring through it is the new challenge and it's very fun. But the biggest change, thank God, was the dungeons. No longer are they boring, unthemed rooms. Before the game came out, the team straight up said, this time the dungeons are huge and each carry their own regional look and feel, just like traditional The Legend of Zelda games. And they weren't lying. The first dungeon I chose to do was the Lightning Temple. After an intense battle outside with Riju, you enter in, and again it feels very Indiana Jones-esque. With nothing but a torch to light the way and an NPC companion, which is nice, you walk into this old sand-drowned tomb. Even just on this entrance alone, it's a 10 out of 10 vast improvement over any of the attempts in the previous game. And then just like I'd expect from a dungeon, it's a labyrinth where you go room to room to solve puzzles, but it always feels open in the spirit of these last two games. Less you need a key to open a specific door, and more which room do you want to tackle first. And then it incorporates the new mechanics in really clever ways, like fusing a mirror onto your shield to make a mirror shield to reflect light, and it's awesome. Using the new Ascend ability, you can zip up and down between rooms and even out of the dungeon, which leads to some great puzzles. And when you power up the batteries, the dungeon music changes and evolves each time, and that is so cool. Then the cherry on the cake is that the boss is incredible. It's this giant fly locust thing, and being the first dungeon, I was so unprepared and it was tough. Barely surviving while shooting every arrow and throwing every last piece of equipment I had at it. It was awesome. It was so good. It was just, thank you, Onuma. I'm sorry I ever complained. And then the rest of the dungeons. It was to the worst disappointment to realize the first dungeon, which I randomly chose on a whim to be my first, was the best, and by a large mile. The next best one I'd say is the Fire Temple, and mainly because it's cool to see a dungeon so massive and with the volcano aesthetic. It feels a lot less claustrophobic than the Lightning Temple, but I think that might be to its detriment. It's just very big and open air, and something about it just doesn't click for me. I mean, it's fun and atmospheric, but I can't say it particularly thrilled me. Also, the frame rate is dog shit. And then there's the Wind Temple, and again, like the Fire Temple, it's fine. It just doesn't wow me. It's the same as the previous two in the sense that you can do any room in any order, but I think when the dungeon itself is open air and large, it doesn't feel like a cool maze you're figuring your way through, but just a collections of rooms that are a checklist. Oh, is he gonna notice me? I guess not. Okay. Anyways, it just feels like a bunch of rooms that you have to turn a switch on in until you can do the boss battle on the middle bit of the platform, which is exacerbated no more than by the worst temple of the game, the Water Temple. Why does this keep happening to you? It doesn't follow the previous Water Dungeon's fault of being overly complicated and confusing. In fact, it's insanely easy and boring, and what is this design? If my favorite thing is labyrinth design, then of course I'm gonna hate a dungeon that is in the sky and everything is laid out. Like there aren't even rooms. It's just a platform with a puzzle on it. Do one, then another, and then hip hop hooray, it's boss time. Are you kidding? We used to be a real country. Dungeons were themed, and that bled into the gameplay and the puzzles and exploration of it all. They weren't just an exercise in ticking off a chore so I could do a boss. Even the best dungeon in this game doesn't feel anywhere near as good as an average dungeon from a traditional game. And Tears of the Kingdom's worst is just as good as Breath of the Wild's best, beating it out slightly because I guess this one is at least kind of water themed? I mean, there's a bit of water. It just sucks so much that they haven't figured this part out yet. All these cool new mechanics and a new sensibility about the series, and yet I'm having more fun in a low poly pixelated moss-ridden castle pushing some blocks around. And you know what? No more Mr. Nice Snug Boy! The shrines sucked in Breath of the Wild. They were fun at first, but after so many, you get so sick of them, and so it baffles me that not only are they back in Tears of the Kingdom, but they are fundamentally exactly the same. One boring aesthetic for 152 new shrines. There was a point in this game when I was exploring some islands and I ran into this diving minigame. Oh, whoa, this is so cool, I thought as I dived through the challenge, only to be rewarded with a shrine. A shrine that taught me how to do a slow motion arrow attack, which I had already been doing for 25 hours and an entire previous game. What? Why is there a tutorial shrine up here? And if they are here, please explain to me why the Korok seeds are also back. Like, come on, these are the most nothing nugget bits of filler put into the world that becomes more annoying to collect rather than rewarding. It's just the things that I'm sure they heard were complained in mass about that they doubled down on. It just baffles me. Rain was a big complaint in Breath of the Wild, with it constantly stopping your progress. Here, they introduced a new cooking ingredient which lets you climb in the rain. That's great, I love that. But the rest of the things that were complained about, no, they're not bad. They're great, actually. That's why they're back and exactly the same. And then there are things they brought back but made worse. Hey, remember in Breath of the Wild how you get an ability from a champion and then could activate it whenever? Well, now they run around with you and you have to go up to them individually and activate it, which is really difficult in hallways and just what the fuck, why? I just needed more to justify a second exploration of this world that I and so many others had combed through already so many times before. And the new stuff did make it feel fresh for only so long before it just felt like I was playing Breath of the Wild 1.5. The Sky Islands are rubbish and are very rarely worth exploring. The depths are cool and full of great challenges and rewards, including these cool Easter egg tunics, but there's not much to motivate you to explore it apart from the sense of map completion. And the new fuse mechanic is fun, but at times it sort of felt optional for traversing the world. I could make a helicopter to climb this mountain, or I could just climb it, or I could just quick travel up to a tower and glide down. I know that the player's choice is the point of it all, but I feel like I used these new abilities way less than I was expected to. And when I did try and get creative, like making a roof to stop the rain putting out my fire, the game didn't want to play along. Cool. Playing this game is so bizarre because it does feel like you're playing one of the best, most brilliantly designed games of our generation, but also feels incredibly underwhelming. But those things aren't my biggest problem. You know me.
Something only I can do.
Yeah, let's discuss. I think something people often overlook about these games is that they're called the Legend of Zelda. A grand tale, an epic fable, a mythical parable about the princess of a faraway kingdom and her heroic knight who saved her. Yeah, the games are big adventures with a bit of dungeon spelunking and some fun minigames thrown in there too, but at their core, they're these great stories. A thing I say often on the channel is that Zelda games aren't Shakespeare, which is a line I use to pre-coat the fact that you're not gonna find an insanely deep text full of nuanced, complicated characters and themes. But that's not to say that they're shallow dribble pieces of nothing for iPad babies. Every Zelda game has a really interesting story, which then when paired with the unique tone and aesthetic of the world, creates something really special. Ocarina of Time seems simple on the surface, but when you dig your teeth into it, you find a beautiful and kinda melancholic tale about the scarcity of childhood and the cruelty of time. Majora's Mask is an incredibly harrowing, out-of-left-field story for a Zelda game, a Nintendo game, a kid's game. It has this ever-hanging morbid threat of a grumpy-looking extinction event, and uses this Groundhog Day-esque 3-day cycle to explore the mortality of people when faced with their deaths. Wind Waker probably has the most boring and bland story of the traditional 3D games, but even then, it's got this incredible ending where it explores the people of yesterday atoning for their sins as the people of today break the cycle that has trapped their kingdom for generations. Twilight Princess is just the best. Yes, I know I suck its dick every 5 seconds, but it's just so good. A failed princess exiled to another realm who has to learn to care about the people of both worlds in order to restore balance to light and dark. and also he takes his shirt off! Woohoo! Skyward Sword may have the most traditional feeling story out of the traditional games, but even then, it's this beautiful tale of personal sacrifice at the hands of fate and how far one will go to save the people that they love. And then we come to Breath of the Wild. And based on everything I just said, you probably think I'm gonna shit all over this game's narrative. But if you didn't jump to conclusions for once, fuck me. It's actually pretty interesting. It starts with the princess knighting Link as her appointed knight and wielder of the Master Sword. But when she speaks, apart from the cool references to the games that I like, you'll notice she sounds quite defeated and forced. We then see the 4 champions of Hyrule, who are overlooking the proceedings and discussing the purpose of such a ceremony, especially with the princess acting like she's already lost. And then Noboru says the thing that this entire plot is hinged on.
That boy is a living reminder of her own failures. Well, at least that's how the princess sees him.
You see, this isn't just some dandy peace-filled time. No, if these two are here, then that means there is some calamity on the horizon. Like Calamity Ganon, a great evil that threatens the land of Hyrule, and Zelda, being a reincarnation of the goddess, is the only one who can stop it. So then Zelda goes around examining a bunch of the ancient technology that popped up out of nowhere, but hey, don't worry about that. It's fine. And Link is ordered by the king to escort her everywhere. Every time Zelda looks at Link, all she can see is her own failure to awaken the powers within herself, which annoys and frustrates her to no end. Until one time she is being chased by ninjas and Link goes, "Get away from my Discord kitten!" And she's like, oh, he's cool actually. And so then the tale becomes Link and Zelda traveling from shrine to shrine, trying to awaken her powers, which silly old Hylia won't let her do for some reason. And Zelda having to overcome her fear of inhibition and her jealousy towards Link to be able to hone her power in time to save the world. Which she fails to do, she can't do it, and Ganon attacks and they run out of time and the entire world falls and dies, and only then on the rainy, muddy battlefield where Link looks death in the eyes do Zelda's powers emerge and she kicks off the domino that will eventually lead to Calamity Ganon's demise. It's unique and it's new and it's interesting and it's definitely a highlight of this game. The problem is you don't even have to fucking see the story. Because you can do anything in any order, they didn't want to force you to experience a narrative in a linear progression either. So they put every cutscene into a random spot on the map, and then you gotta go find them just to know why everything went to shit 100 years ago. But the narrative has no stake on your journey. It's all just backstory, lore that sets the stage. Whereas narratives in the previous games acted as a motivator to get you from dungeon to dungeon or set piece to set piece, here they're just a little thing on the side you can do, if you want. The plot of this game really is Link wakes up, Ganon is there, he fucks around a bit and then stopped him. The end. I've always thought it was a massive shame because the story itself is really interesting, and when you've got that new Link and Zelda dynamic which is so new and exciting, and it's just chef's kiss, ratatouille in the kitchen, ba-dum-bum, da-dum-bum. But the fact it's optional always bugged me. So in that 6-year wait between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it was the one thing I really hoped they would improve on. The one thing I really wanted them to integrate better into the gameplay so I have a reason to care about exploring this world again. And it is the worst story in any Zelda game ever. It's bad, it's pretty rubbish, but no, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You can't just throw hot wild conjecture in the middle of a YouTube video for dramatic effect. Let's rewind the clock. Tears of the Kingdom actually starts out incredibly well. Immediately we are thrown right into the depths of it all, with a fade in from black onto the Hylian knight and princess exploring a cave, now with an incredibly cute short hairstyle. Aww. It immediately sets the tone apart from its predecessor, both visually because there weren't any caves before, and also because they feel confined and claustrophobic, far removed from Breath of the Wild's free-wilding open-air cliff shot. For someone like me who was very frustrated Zelda was sort of just a narrative prop that you never came into contact with, it filled me with glee being able to run circles around her on a casual dungeon crawling mission. It's a casual nature we rarely get to see between these two in the series, and it's so delightful, and maybe I'll get to hold her hand? What? Then Zelda begins to yap and yap about the ruins they're in, but what Zelda doesn't realize is that under her monologue of facts is ominous dark music, which doesn't help in easing the tension of the atmosphere. Tension which rises and rises until they find a dry, withered corpse. And this is just so exciting because we haven't seen the G-Man Ganondorf in really 17 years since Twilight Princess. And when he begins to speak, chills shoot up your spine. He throws a miasma of evil magic, corroding all your hard work from the previous game, and then in one fell swoop, shatters the Master Sword. Zelda falls down a cliff, disappears, Link is saved by some glowing green hand, and Hyrule Castle is blasted high into the sky, and what an opening! I love the slow openings of previous games, but it is really refreshing to just go boom, okay, here is everything, let's go, instead of 5 minutes of "This is but one of the legends of which the people speak." Oh my god, hurry up! But then after our little introduction, we are introduced to this ghost goat guy on the Great Sky Island. And ignoring the qualms that it is just the Great Plateau, again, it is kinda interesting. Who is this guy? How did he know about us? He heard a lot about us from Zelda, but she just disappeared. It's a cool mystery, and when you get to the end of the tutorial area, you get a really cool cutscene where Link somehow hands the broken Master Sword to Zelda, and you're like, what? Where is she, huh?
She's so in the past. She's in the past for real.
The cloud opens up, and it's finally exploring time. Oops. It's a great opening and narratively a lot more promising than Breath of the Wild start. And when you get to the surface, you start talking to characters and there's cutscenes and they all know who you are now because of the first game, and the old woman is a hot young lady now? Okay, what? And then you get sent to Hyrule Castle and you spot Zelda in the distance and you're like, what? What is going on? It's like all my prayers were answered. Yes, it's still open world, but they want me to go to specific places, to have story beats happen, to motivate me to go to the next place. It's all I ever wanted from Breath of the Wild story. And then you get told about Zelda's memories. No! Maybe one of the most left field, bizarre, awful decisions they make in this entire game is reusing the memories. More so than the shrines and the dungeons, it is maybe my biggest problem with Breath of the Wild, and they not only don't try and make it better, but just double down on them here. In fact, it's even worse in Tears of the Kingdom because the backstory, the answer to what happened to Zelda, is so boring and kinda bad. Breath of the Wild at least had this really unique and interesting story about Link and Zelda's relationship with her failing her powers. Here it's just... it's a story about a bunch of stupid people in a really boring set of events with a really bland incarnation of the main villain. It picks right up from Zelda falling down the hole, where she mysteriously lands outside on a cliffside. She is then found by this very pretty woman and the goat, who claim to be the founders of Hyrule. Which might ring an alarm bell as a fan because we saw Link and Zelda found Hyrule only 2 games ago, and only 2 years ago in the remaster of said game, but I digress. I'll let him cook. Zelda is stuck all the way in the past, which is a really cool concept. So after getting some new drip, Zelda is introduced to Mineru, who is like, "Hey, what's up, Zelda? Nice to meet you. By the way, if you're thinking about turning yourself into a dragon via draconification, do not do it. Absolutely do not do it." And so as the player, you're like, oh, I guess Zelda's gonna turn herself into a dragon. Alright. And then in our next cutscene, we're in the desert. There's an army, and then we see our big boy leader in the flesh after so many years. The music hits, and it's just so nice to have Ganondorf back, and he's got such a cool design here, and it's just rad. Until our next scene is a meeting with the king, and I think this is where all my troubles began. Zelda sorta just stands there, as Ganondorf does his diplomatic yapping. The only thing of concern she says after he leaves is,
I believe that man's heart holds many dark ambitions. Just his name, even that, it gives me pause.
Yeah, because that's the guy who imprisoned you for 100 years and destroyed the entire world and attempted to 100 times throughout history, and she acts like she doesn't recognize him? Say something, say that to him. Are you stupid? And if she is, it's nowhere near as bad as the goat guy who says,
I am well aware of his evil nature. For that reason, and others, I want him close. it will be easier to keep an eye on him.
Yeah, until the next cutscene. I guess he didn't keep him close enough. Also, Sonia dies in this almost pantomime way where Ganon pretends to be Zelda, and then Zelda is like, "You're not Zelda, I'm Zelda." And he's like, "Alright, you got me," and then does a teleports behind you. Nothing personal, kid. And now Ganon has one of the magical tears. By the way, there are a bunch of magical tears, and that's why it's called Tears of the Kingdom. And now with it, Ganon can begin conquering Hyrule, and I was baffled during this part of the story. This does not feel like the same Zelda we saw in Breath of the Wild. There she was smart and cunning, obsessed with research and technology, which was really an attempt to build a bridge to a goal she believed would make her worthy in the eyes of her father, her late mother, and maybe even herself. She goes on this great character arc accompanied by her knight that leads to her making the ultimate sacrifice of a 100-year stasis to keep the world's greatest evil at bay. She cannot be the same character as this girl who just stands around and goes, "Oh, I think he might be evil, I don't know. Oh, I really miss my friend Link." Like, am I crazy or what? She gets cool moments, yeah. Like, it is interesting when she tells Rauru she knows they're going to lose their battle against Ganon because in the future he exists, but Zelda doesn't learn or grow from anything that happens in the past. It's all just a big excuse to explain why she isn't around during the game, and is all written to lead to this one big plot twist. Oh, I wonder what it is. Or she turns herself into a dragon. To revive the Master Sword and survive the thousands of years it'll take to meet up again with Link, she swallows one of the tears and turns into a dragon. A dragon which has been flying around the entire game and actually pops right up at the start if you have a keen eye. But it's supposed to feel like this grand plot twist and this insane dramatic narrative moment, and for me I went, "Oh, Zelda's the dragon. Alright, cool." It would be a great sacrifice, I think, if the game backed up its claim that dragonification makes you lose your sense of self as you turn into a monster. The ultimate sacrifice with long-standing consequences. Of course they don't follow through on it! You save her and she goes back to normal and she doesn't even remember being a dragon. Why am I supposed to care if the game can't even? This version of the character really falls flat, which I find so bizarre and frustrating because earlier versions of the princess with way less screen time have so much more depth and nuance. The complete dichotomy of her nature from her previous appearance, in addition to her just being passive and a bit stupid, are really frustrating to watch. Almost as frustrating as seeing Ganondorf return after 17 years and be insanely boring. Oh my god. Visually, he looks great, but that's just about all the G-Man this time has going on. This version of Ganondorf is bland and one note. His only motivation is to take over Hyrule. There isn't anything more interesting going on beyond that. At his best, Ganondorf is about sad monologues in the dying winds of a kingdom long forgotten. Small empathetic pieces of worldview that make you rationalize a fate-driven monster who wants dominion over the world. Even when he has been simpler, it has more juice to it. Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time wants nothing more than to be the king of evil, but it's the way he's built up and plays on the naivety of the two children, plus you as the player, that sends a shocking twist halfway through, resulting in your efforts helping aid the apocalypse. Oops. A lot of people hate Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, and I get it. He comes out of nowhere right at the end, taking the spotlight away from a cool new villain, and then just does a, "Oh, I want to be evil." But even within that simplicity, he's got the fucking sauce. He's slow and menacing, his stature full of power. And then he turns into a giant beast that turns into a horseback chase and then a one-on-one sword duel, and despite its simplicity, it is still grand and epic. Here, there is nothing to Ganondorf. He just wants to be evil and take over the world. We barely see him before he succeeds. And in one of those scenes, he does a hee, "I'm not gonna kill you," and it's just whatever. It is just boring and bland, and I hate this type of storytelling in Zelda. It frustrates me that it's this pocket thing to the side you can discover upon if you want, but at least Breath of the Wild did us the courtesy of making it good. What is the point of bringing back Ganondorf if, from Link's perspective, he is a guy he met a week ago, saw some videos on his iPad where he was a bit mean to his girlfriend, and then died after one encounter? It's been 2 games of this style of storytelling, and it ain't working. Doing the main chunk of the story at your own pace feels so weird, and makes Link and you, the player, such a non-participant in what is going on. The game's big pull is Zelda saying,
Link, you must find me.
But if you do all the memories first, which the game lets you because that is the point of this style of game, then you know where Zelda is. She's there in the past, aka a dragon in the present. Following the main quest to get to the dungeons, every time you run into a bunch of people going, I wonder where Zelda is, what's up with Zelda appearing and disappearing, any updates on Zelda, we need to find Zelda, I fucking know where she is, she's there, say something, Link. And after you finish every single dungeon, the guardian spirit you have tells you about the imprisoning war, but they tell you the exact same way with the exact same dialogue every single time, like it's a new fresh plot twist and not something I have seen in full and been told 3 fucking times prior by the other guys. Right up until the end of the game, they keep dropping plot points that I guess are supposed to be revealing events, but you've seen them, so you're just like, huh? In this new style of Zelda, the games don't really feel like the Legend of Zelda anymore. They don't feel like an epic or a grand tale that is passed down through the generations. They're just about some guy dicking about for a bit before stopping a great evil who was once a bit rude to his Pookie Bear. The game has no agency, and with the plot being so disconnected from the game means it rarely feels like the stakes are getting higher. It's very much, you should go look at these 4 areas if you want, I guess, or maybe you should look into where Zelda is, and then you can just not do any of that, because they want you to experience what you want, when you want it, and how you want it, which again, I reiterate, I get is the point. It's free, it's freer than the US of A, baby! But it clashes against a traditional narrative where information is revealed to you at deliberately picked points to create intrigue and twists and have rising tension that fuels you into the finale. It's so much harder to care about Link catching Zelda as she falls from the sky when I barely got to know her. And my last complaint is one which I only think half of you will agree with me on, but okay. At one point after the 4 dungeons, Link finds the spirit of Mineru, the goat lady who told Zelda not to turn into a dragon. She tells Link the history of everything, which if you have done the memories, you already know. But I guess out of fear of players missing out on those and still wanting to explain the world to them, you have to hear it again. Mineru explains that the Zonai, the goat people, came down from the skies and brought their technology to help establish the kingdom of Hyrule, and like, really? You just re-released the game that explained the origin of Hyrule with people from the skies. I don't remember seeing any goat people up there. Well, maybe one goat. But of course, everything can be rewritten to shape the new game. That's the point. The past doesn't matter. It's malleable. Even the last game doesn't matter because boy, oh boy, you will spend a lot of time playing Tears of the Kingdom asking yourself, does this game want to be a sequel to Breath of the Wild or not? Because it sometimes references things that happened last time and characters from that game do show up, but then it also rips out every single shrine, tower, and mention of Sheikah technology like boom, vanish, gone, nope, don't worry about it, never existed. Who's Cass? What are you talking about, you fucking idiot? Everything from the past doesn't matter because we can rewrite everything for every new game except, ignore the references to the previous games. Oh, yeah, and definitely ignore the Master Sword making a very familiar sound effect as a certain musical motif plays over the top. I don't expect the Zelda games to line up like a perfect puzzle, and I never have. But I am a defender of the Zelda timeline because I think it's wholly unique and a bit silly and this really fantastical way to tie the games together. And also recently at an event in Sydney, Australia of all places, they confirmed a new timeline where Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are in their own little timeline, which makes so much sense and actually no sense at all and just Nintendo doesn't prioritize the story of these games. It's always been something used to drive forward the player to the new gameplay stuff, which is what they're ace at. And that's fine because it worked before and they had a great balance. But sometimes it feels like you're punished for being invested in this franchise. Because the past matters in terms of legacy, except it doesn't because they rewrite it whenever they want. But also they don't because that stuff still happened. But also we want to tell a new story that doesn't fit in with whatever that is. And if you got interested because you liked it, thanks! But if you got invested, fuck you, because the story doesn't matter. It's not that type of series. Well, if it doesn't matter, why did I get so invested in 2 courageous kids whose optimistic short-sightedness brought about the end ending of the world, or a young boy whose eyes showed the darkness of people when faced with their mortality, or a couple of kids dragged into destinies laid out before them by the sins of their ancestors, or a cursed princess learning to trust and care for others and to forgive herself, or two young lovebirds thrust into a grander destiny and stopping short of nothing to save one another, or a princess tormented by her companion, an ever-living reminder of her failures to awaken her powers that will save the world. They're not supposed to be rich texts, but they are what made me fall in love with this series, and to see them pushed aside and have no congruity with the gameplay, it just breaks my heart. Oh no, so there's voice acting now. And it kind of sucks. It's easy for me to sit here and complain about things I don't like, but is there any way they could fix any of this stuff? Yes! And no, I don't really know. I'm not a game designer. Big open world games with gigantic, epic, and enthralling narratives do exist, such as this year's earlier entry, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But that's not what Nintendo are trying to do here. They want you to have a big sandbox you can go anywhere and do anything with. Well, games like Half-Life 2 scratch that here are the toys in a sandbox do what you like approach, but they're strictly linear, which Zelda is not. There are games like Fallout New Vegas which are open world and allow a big wide array of freedom as well as a cool narrative that takes into account almost any decision you can make, but the only time that world is interactive is when it's falling apart. Ugh. I'm not saying Tears of the Kingdom should have been Zelda New Vegas, and that is definitely not what Nintendo wants. They love to do new things to push the boundary, and it's something the series needs too. Look at the sales for the series. These two did gangbusters because they are incredible games. Well, my darling child Twilight Princess sold less than Phantom Hourglass in Japan. Brother, what the Japan? What the fuck? What I'm trying to say is that to me, they feel like they're missing something that made me fall in love with them in the first place. But if that's the trade-off for exciting new games that keep pushing the envelope forward, maybe it's worth it. It's clear that Nintendo wants to experiment with Zelda. If it wasn't obvious in the two mainline games, look at the newly released Echoes of Wisdom. Yeah, they could have made a Link's Awakening sequel, swapping Link out with Zelda and having her swing a sword around, but instead they've turned the game on its head, making use of this new copy echo mechanic which turns the entire world into a sandbox. I love these games, which is something I hope never gets lost in these critiques of mine, and I know eventually they'll get better at incorporating these two aspects together once again and make me super happy. And something I think whiners like me forget is that the old games aren't going anywhere. My copy of Twilight Princess isn't going to suddenly disappear. And in the meantime, I've scratched that itch in other ways. In the years between Breath of the Wild and now, I've expanded my taste and have divulged in lots of open world story-based games. Ones with those high concept narratives powered by interesting characters and their journeys all acting as great motivators to get me from one battle to the next, one area to the next, one set piece to the next. And they've all been great and I've loved them. Those are my thoughts on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which is something a lot of you were keen on last time I asked. So if there are any other Zelda games you want me to tackle, please let me know. The last big one is Wind Waker, which I don't have a lot of nice things to say about, and it's always so much harder to make videos on things you don't like, but if you want it, I'll do whatever you want. And if you want to get these videos early, plus some bonus goodies like an extended commentary track and a behind the scenes video, please consider becoming a member. It really helps me out because it helps me pay my rent so I can keep living on this earth. Woohoo! And please let me know down below if you agree or disagree with anything that I said. Like, I love reading the comments. It is my favorite activity in the world just after taking a big poo. But apart from that, please have yourselves a fantastic day and stay snug. See ya.